Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. We're so excited to be back with you today. Today, we are talking about a very special topic, and we want you to stay until the end because we have a very amazing woman, Catherine Moore, LCSW, who's going to be speaking to us about the issues of burnout on the job, stress related um, trauma, and other things that are going to be relevant to your day to day life. So, we want you to be a part of the conversation. Do us a favor and share this message wide wherever you're listening from, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. We want to make sure that our community is informed and empowered. So, we also want to engage with you. So, go ahead and connect with us throughout this talk. Let us know where you're from, where you're listening from. If there's a wisdom nugget that resonates with you, we want to know that as well. Comment below, like, and share this video. Um, yeah, and we're really excited. So, happy July. I don't know if I got to say that before, but happy July. This month, we'll be talking all things health, mental health, and medical health. But today, of course, we'll be dealing with mental health and trauma. So, Catherine Moore is with us. Catherine, thank you so much for being with us and sharing this space.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. We're talking about a topic that's so relevant, especially in today's world, where many people are working from home and where the dynamics of the workforce or the work environment has shifted drastically since the pandemic. So we're really excited about this topic, but I want to formally introduce you, Catherine. Um, Catherine Moore is an LCSW and has over 11 years of experience at practicing social work in the areas of medical social work, grief, anxiety, and older adult populations. She's an international speaker, therapist, coach, and podcaster, alumni of California State University in Long Beach with a bachelor's and master's in social work. Her passion for helping others led her to obtain her license as a clinical social worker. She's also the founder of Rise Directory, which is a membership based directory of clinical supervisors for social workers. And she has hosted one of the top 10 social work podcasts called Social Workers Rise. Catherine has worked with organizations and colleges to provide trainings on wellness and burnout recovery. Really excited to have you once again, Catherine.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much.
Absolutely. So I just want to jump into it. I love talking to fellow social workers because we get it. And I think we're just very, I love all humans, but very special people because we're tasked with the responsibility or call to maintain humanity and push humanity forward. What led you into the field of social work? What were some of the motivating factors?
Yeah, so there was a couple motivating factors for me. And the biggest one was actually a wildfire. So I grew up here in California, and my personality has always been very helpful. Like, I'll take in the neighborhood strays and feed them and nurture them. My grandmother hated it because it's filthy, but that was always just me. I was always helping people. And then when I was about 16 years old, there was a wildfire that came through as the old fire in 2003, aging myself here. And it burned down our house, burned down the neighborhood, it burned down hundreds of homes in my community. And as a teenager, I mean, I was just lost. I was just homeless overnight. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any possessions. And I just felt very lost is the word that comes to mind. And I was overwhelmed with the amount of community support that came from my teachers, that came from the local churches, that came from complete strangers. And it was the most basic things that made me feel human again. For example, getting a nice blanket. I remember a down comforter that I had, and I had never had a down comforter before. And I was like, wow, this thing's nice. And as a teenage girl, somebody gave me nail polish. And I thought, oh my gosh, getting nail polish again, because that's not something that you need. And so we didn't have a lot of money. And my grandmother's like, we just got to get the basics, socks, shoes, clothes, and all those things are expensive, jackets. And so nail polish, forget about it. But that little bottle of nail polish just helped me feel like me again. And so I always remembered these tiny little gestures that complete strangers had shown to me and the impact that it made and the hope that it gave me when I felt like I just couldn't see any hope. I couldn't see how we could ever get our life back together. And so it was the generosity of these strangers that really inspired me to be that for someone else, to do what I can to give back, to help other people who might be going through one of the worst times in their life. And that's exactly what I get to do every single day as a social worker and also as a therapist.
I love that. That's such an inspiring, empowering story. How you were the recipient of generosity and kindness and one of the most down times of your life, and remembering something that seems so insignificant like nail polish, but how that made all the difference to your feeling like yourself again, to your sense of your concept of self and self esteem. And I love that now you get to, it's a full circle. You get to do that for other people.
Exactly.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that story. So I know that your expertise is in the area of working with um, professionals that experience burnout and stress. And I was wondering if you can speak to the trends and how, since the pandemic, what trends have you noticed in terms of burnout and work-related stress and professionals, namely women?
Yes, yes, for sure. So the trends that I've seen, and probably not surprising if you're listening to this, is that there's more burnout. There's more anxiety. Anxiety increased 20% after the pandemic. And as women, we are the ones that often hold our families together. We are the ones that coordinate all the schedules, that get the kids to school, to sports. We get ourselves to work. We get food for the house. We make so all of these different areas that we're doing. And what I've realized in my research, because I actually burnt out myself. So I was trying to do all of the things and keep everyone together and just do what I felt was expected of me to be a quote, good wife, a good worker, a good mother. And and I had all of this pressure on myself, and so I completely burnt out and it was terrible. My personality changed. I was irritable. I was not someone that you wanted to hang around with. My family didn't want to be around me. It was just not a good time in my life. And to realize that so many other women who are giving, who continually give of ourselves, give until there's nothing left, right? And then we continue to dig deep down, like maybe there's something left. There has to be, because this is what I'm supposed to do, right? Quote, supposed to do. And that's what I've seen over and over again is that we continue to give and we haven't really been able to acknowledge what we need ourselves. And in my research, I'm realizing that this could come from a place of ongoing or chronic trauma where we're experiencing in our childhood where we're continuing to take care of others. And I don't know, Miss Moore, if you've experienced that or known people where as children we need to be aware of how our caregivers are doing, whether that's mom, grandma, whoever. If they're not doing good, if they're tired, if they're being abused, if they're suffering from alcoholism or drugs or anything like that, where the children feel like they have to take care of them, or if the children are taking care of younger siblings, right? Because maybe mom's at work. And so we have to constantly take care of other people. And it doesn't matter how we feel about it because we still have to do it, right? So as children, sometimes we learn to ignore our feelings, we just stuff it down there. And we pay attention to what everybody else needs because that's what we need to survive. That's what we need to keep peace in the house, to stay safe. And so as adults, when we show up to the workforce, we're doing this exact same thing. We're constantly aware. We're very in tune to how other people are feeling, what other people's needs are, and we lose ourselves. We're not in tune to what we need. And that's what I've seen a lot with the people, right now that coming out of the pandemic is that we're constantly evaluating and surveying what other people need, and we forget about ourselves to the point that it's actually harmful.
Yeah. You hit on some really important things, Catherine, and I think the word that's coming to me is learned behavior. Um, it's when you've lived in an environment where you've learned, like you said, to suppress your emotions, you've learned to mask, you've learned to just continue going without getting the proper help you need, without even knowing what help looks like for you, because perhaps you've never had the privilege of getting the help that you need, right? Because I think even the idea of self care, which we haven't gotten into, sometimes self care is, depending on what it looks like, could be a privilege. Not everyone can access it. Not everyone can access treatment, care, healing needed to overcome things like trauma. But what I love is that you have, through your studies, have seen that connection of trauma, the patterns that may have been learned or untreated trauma, right? And how that is connected to the you being susceptible to this ongoing sense of things happening to you and not having that sense of control, even in the workplace. And I don't know if I've seen enough research on this, but I think it's so you're onto something that many people have missed. Tell us more about what you're seeing in your research in that connection, if you can.
Yeah. So as I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that the women that I've talked to, that I've worked with doing therapy, social workers that I've coached and just talked to, is that we are constantly assessing what it is I need to do, right? What is my boss? What mood is my boss in, right? Because that's going to matter how I show up, how I communicate, if I'm going to ask for a mental health day or some time off, or if I'm just going to put it on the back burner and wait because they're not in a good mood, right? So constantly assessing. And then also too, for our safety as women, we're always attuned, or I hope that we're attuned to being aware of our surroundings, right? To being hyper alert to how we present ourselves. How much makeup are we putting on? How low is this shirt cut? Am I sending the wrong impression? Is this going to get me hurt? Right? If I'm walking down the street or walking from my car to work, who's around me? What kind of message am I sending them? Am I safe? And so, and even in the workplace too, how am I interacting with coworkers? Am I being too friendly? Is this being taken the wrong way? And so there's always this awareness that we have of other people that we don't really check in with ourselves. I mean, we ask other people
Yeah,
how we're doing, but it's like, how are you doing today? How am I feeling today? And
yeah,
that's one of my, just to finish up here, that's one of my first areas that I start with, is checking in with
yes,
yourself, right?
I
Like
love that.
being in tune with your feelings. How's your body feeling? How's your emotions feeling?
Great,
What might you need today?
I love that. And I would assume that is something that we should be doing when we wake up, but also throughout the day, the consistent assessing, because sounds like we're assessing everything else but our own selves. So we have the gift, we have the skill set to assess, because we're consistently assessing other people's mood, their affect, what they're feeling, but we're just not in tune with assessing our own well-being or our own levels. And so you mentioned, I was really excited, I wanted to comment on it, but you had mentioned the I think the hyper vigilance of women on the in the workforce, where I think sort of the stereotypes over the years that I think are still prevalent in today's time. You think 2023 women would not still be dealing with the same things, but um, the way we dress, is my shirt too low? Am I being, like you said, overly friendly with this particular person, or am I being too aggressive, or am I being seen as a pushover, right? And I think just all of those real concerns happen to women on a day to day, and I think we've sort of learned to live with them, not talk about them, and to succumb to culture. But I love that you pointed that out, because that does affect our well-being when you are in a hypervigilant state, and you're constantly hypervigilant to your own self, or hypercritical. I muted myself. Hypercritical to your own self. I think a lot of times that does affect your levels, your stress levels. So I'm wondering, how do we deal with those stereotypes in the workforce? And getting a little off topic, but just to those things, how do we deal with that? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, and I love that question. And first, just to validate, it's exhausting just having to be
Yes.
so alert all the time, man. Sometimes if you go home and just zone out, that is okay. That is okay. Um,
Yes.
as far as the stereotypes, I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to get away from them. I don't know about my
Yeah.
lifetime, but there's always going to be stereotypes about people, right?
Yeah.
And so for other people or for women in general, I would say do what you feel comfortable with. You have the information, you've assessed everybody, you know yourself. And ultimately, there's always going to be people who say stuff about you, right? Like today, I'm wearing red lipstick. There could be people that say, hey, that is looking good. Or there could be other people like, oh, no, that is way too much. Where does she think she's working at? Right. But I wear it because I like it. It it's a reflection of me. It's a reflection of how I'm feeling. I'm feeling feisty today, right? So being okay with that and learning again back to yourself what it is that you like. Because I could go through lipstick shades all day and there will still be people who have something to say about it. But ultimately, if you like yourself, if you're comfortable with it, then that is what matters. That's what's going to be important. That's what's going to help you show up as your full self. And that is the sweet spot when we can show up as our full selves and be like, look, people have stuff to say, and that is okay because I am happy with me. And man, once we can harness that, that is power. That is powerful. And it makes me think that society does not want us to learn how to truly step in to our power, how to truly be ourselves, because that's when we're not scared, when we're unafraid, when we're brave, when we're bold, when we're courageous. And that's when we're passionate, right? That's a place that I would love to live in and that I would hope other women can also live there too, can also find that place where the stereotypes don't affect them. Or if they do, just having that boundary and that assertiveness to say, you know what, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. And look for a different job, start your own business, go where it is that your skill set leads you, that you are valued, you are wanted, you are seen, and you're operating in your highest power.
Catherine, that's so incredible and so inspiring. I love that. How do we, being our place of power, um, show up as our full selves, our most authentic selves on our workspaces? And I think one of the very interesting things is for a very long time, I think we put up with certain things in a workforce because we felt like we had to, like we had to put up. We thought we had to put up with like harassment and being ignored or not being valued. When in fact, you deserve to be valued in your and wherever you work. You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. You deserve to have a chance to be seen, to be heard, and you have to know that, right? And so, in order to know what you deserve, you sort of got to be connected to yourself. And I think a lot of people sometimes are going to work every day. They're trying to survive, but they're not really thinking about those other things. Like I just got to do this to survive, but outside of surviving, you can still go to work and thrive and be valued. And I think the trends are changing. But we do need to learn, especially as women, how to operate in our place of power. Because I think men get it, right? Um, they come into the room and they expect things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They expect people to listen, even if they don't really have much to say. But a lot of times we're afraid to speak up in meetings. We're afraid to let our voice be heard. We're afraid to present. We're afraid to be at the forefront. We'd rather be in the back doing things, coordinating behind the scenes.
Yep.
But we're afraid to rise to our place of power.
Yes.
We do it.
And I will say it does take courage, right? Because I work with people in therapy, and it takes courage to really look at yourself and your life and say, how does this make me feel? It might make you feel bad. And maybe we don't want that information because we just stuff it down. And if we can just keep coping and keep going, it'll be okay. But once we decide to look at it and to say, I'm going to start stepping into my power, what does that look like? It takes a lot of courage to be able to say, there might be things that are broken. There might be things that don't serve me anymore. There might be relationships that I need to let go of. There might be people in my life that are holding me back. And that can be a really, really difficult realization.
I love that. Very true. And that goes back into the connection between what's happening um, outside of the workplace. You talked about earlier that correlation between trauma, or there may be other things in life that may be weighing you down that is seeping into the workspace or your workplace, and then maybe time to evaluate relationships or other responsibilities in your life. Is it still working for me at this stage of my life? Do I let it go? All of that is important to your health, and your performance and your productivity, in the workforce. So I thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yes, of course. Very
I'm,
important.
I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the symptoms and signs of burnout and stress. What does that look like? And if I may throw a third one in, compassion fatigue, especially for those that are working in human services, or in social work or social services. What does that look like? Burnout, stress, and compassion fatigue.
I've done entire presentations on this, so I will try to summarize. But there's different levels. So if we're talking about burnout, it usually creeps up on us. So it's not something like your common cold where you're like, bam, I got it, but it creeps in slowly, and there's going to be different changes physically and emotionally that you might begin to notice if you're really in tune with yourself. The problem with burnout is we tend to be so laser focused on what it is that we have to do that the first symptom is if you feel like you are just going and going and going to make ends meet and you're not getting ahead, you feel stuck, you don't know how to get out of this rut, that is a red flag. If you are feeling irritable, if you are getting sick more often, if you are not able to sleep, either trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, if you are having people say, hey, like, are you okay? You seem a little off, right? So some personality changes, even that might be going on there, like just because you're so trying to get everything done and you're trying to show up everywhere that you're not showing up anywhere. So those are some of the kind of the upper level ones. And the compassion fatigue is another symptom of it, where essentially it's when we when we start at a position, right? So this happens a lot with social workers, nurses, and we can feel empathy for other people. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. This must be terrible. This must be, really scary, whatever it might be. And you can feel that emotion, right? You're not taking it on yourself, but you can imagine what they would be feeling. And if we're experiencing compassion fatigue, that emotion is just not there anymore. It's kind of worn down to the point where it's like, oh, okay, well, take a number, stand in line. We're all feeling like this, right? So that would be, a really big sign. And that points to a bigger personality change for me, because if you were once a caring, compassionate person and now you're like just kind of dismissive, then there's a problem there.
Thank you so much for that. And what could we do, when we notice these signs? What are some recommendations? Someone's working on a job, they start paying attention, they realize, wow, I'm really experiencing severe burnout. Because I think some of it, which some other symptoms, maybe this level of stress, depending on how burnt out you are, how stressed you are from work. It could also affect you physically. So whether it's headaches, or you may be more susceptible to illness like common cold or other
Mm-hmm.
things. So it may affect your body. You talked about anxiety. It may be even difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating, um, or difficulty completing a task. So there are other, there are more extreme as well. But if we're experiencing these symptoms, what are your recommendations? What should we do?
First, I would recommend that you sit down and really have a heart to heart with yourself and say, what are my values? That's where I started. I started with my values. For me, it's family, health, and career, right? Oh, and spirituality, right? So being able to look at these and say, how much of my time is being reflected in these priorities and these values, and what am I okay with? And if you find, chances are you're going to find that there is a disconnect there, and we need to revisit that and use your values as a guidepost, as a map for how we're spending our energy. So if my family is truly important to me, then I need to make sure I'm spending some energy with them, right? Like at least a little bit, something. And so
Absolutely.
so that's what it was for me. And then figuring out, what it is that I can, delegate, what it is that I really have to do, what is going to be most important in where I prioritize my energy spent.
I love that, Catherine. And because it really takes you back to yourself, because all of this is about self, right? Um, what's important to me? What are my values? Am I being true to who I am? And that's why values are important. They come about based on our what we believe in, our belief system, the way we grew up, the things that really are important to our own selves, our heart. Really getting back to that, I think is so essential. Um, and evaluating those things, evaluating those areas. And then I would even recommend, maybe talking to your supervisor. Take vacation days. Some of us don't take our vacation, and when we're on vacation we're really not, because we're on our computers checking our emails.
Yep.
Really take opportunities to take your time when you have it. um, and I would also say, depending on your workforce, talk to your supervisor if you're having a really difficult time. There may be resources that your job may be able to provide you. I know in our agency, we have mental health days. You don't got to tell us. All you got to say is, I having a mental health day. I am taking off. And we get it. We understand. We normalize that. We normalize wellness. Because I think that's what people need. We need to normalize it. So there are so many other things that could be done, but we do want you to do something. And I think that's the main point. It's not just be susceptible to what's going on, but do something about it, because you do matter. I
Yep.
apologize for my
Yep.
background noise.
Exactly. And this is all of the things that I talk about when I do the workshops with people. My workshops are very interactive. I give you activities and reflection tools and information that you need to say, okay, what is it that needs to change? What's going right? What's going wrong? What's my vision for the future? And having that vision and that purpose is really, really important and can get us through a lot of hard times.
Absolutely, and we're coming to a close so fast, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the directory that you founded for clinical supervisors. If you can speak to that directory, where it derived from, and what are some of the benefits of it?
Definitely. So the RISE directory is a virtual directory of clinical supervisors of social workers. And we not only provide a directory, but we also provide support groups for the clinical supervisors, consultation groups. And we're also in the process of being approved for CEUs. So we will be able to provide leadership focused CEUs around clinical supervision, because that's an area that is needs a lot of work. And so I am happy to help fill some space in there. And it's been really powerful, even just with the support groups, the consultation groups, that I've heard a story. For example, one story is that working in private practice can be very isolating and feel very alone, and you're unsure, am I making the right decision, am I doing everything? But being able to go to these groups, they're twice a month, is being able to help them feel seen, help them feel valued, really reiterate that you do have a support. There are people who get you. There are people who can help you if you're having a hard time. because supervising people is not easy.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking that on. There is such a gap area in leadership and social work. That's also one of my passions. So you're singing the same song as I am. We're singing the same tune. Um, Leadership within social work is such an underdeveloped area, but also in the realm of when you're supervising, there's so much you got to work through your own stuff, other people's stuff, and if you're still seeing clients, that too. So it really there is a need there, and I appreciate you for taking that on. If someone's interested in connecting to that support group or to that directory, how could they do it?
Definitely. So risedirectory.com. You can find us on the website, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. We're on all major platforms, Instagram.
Awesome. And that's risedirectory.com. So feel free to reach out to Catherine. And if there's a resource that you need, we encourage you to get it because, again, we prioritize everyone, we assess everyone, but we don't assess ourselves. We want to make sure that you're prioritized and that you have the care that you need as a social worker or professional. If there are any last words, Catherine, last words of encouragement that you can give to those that are listening, we'd love to hear that as well in our closing.
Yeah. So my last words of encouragement are you are never stuck. You have so many amazing transferable skills. You have so many amazing talents that if you're not being recognized in your current role, there is more out there for you. There is definitely hope. You can reach out to myself, to Mrs. Moore, and definitely get some help. Go to risedirectory.com. There's a lot of resources for you around clinical supervision as well.
Amazing. And yes, we're both Moors, so
Yes.
so I love that. But
Yes.
thank you so much, Catherine, for being with us. We'd love to bring you back on in the future, but just for your wisdom, your expertise, and for taking us on. Easy. So thank you for the space you hold in the world, art, and work. We appreciate you for being with us.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate you. Thank you so much. And these are great conversations. I'm glad we're having them.
Yes, we have to have more of them. We have to continue raising awareness. All of you, please reach out to Catherine if you are interested in her services, if you want to learn more about it. I believe that's your website also there, socialworkersrise.com.
Yes.
Yes, I love it.
Yes.
Social
We have a
workers, remember,
podcast.
yes. And is the podcast available on that website?
Yes.
Perfect. And how can they download or subscribe to the podcast?
We are on all major platforms. Just search in Social Workers Rise and you will see my face, and we're right there.
I love it. Please go ahead if you're a podcaster or if you love listening to podcasts. I always recommend it. They're great ways to keep yourself inspired and empowered. You can go ahead and go to any of the major podcast platform, look up Social Workers Rise, and hit that subscribe button. And then also ATL Rise. iRaise also has an ATL Rise podcast. So we also want you to subscribe to that as well. So as you're seeing, we're not short of resources here. We're providing content to you because we want to make sure that you are prioritized and that you are empowered because you deserve that. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode, for tuning in, and for joining us for this short 30-minute fireside chat. Don't forget again to subscribe to all our channels and our podcast at iRace Inc. We want you to continue being fueled and uplifted through our content. Don't forget to also share this message out. Comment if you're listening after it's live. We still want to hear your comments. We do check those. And if there's content that you want to hear that's not yet available, we want you to reach out to us at info@iraceinc.org. We appreciate you all so much. We hope you enjoyed your 4th of July, and we'll be back. Stay tuned. We'll see you soon next week.